The Super Bowl is over, which means it's baseball season, baby. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today. Frank Sample joined by everybody. Scott White, Chris Towers, and Chris the Welsh. Today on the show, it's Valentine's Day. Or if you're watching us live, it's almost Valentine's Day. And you know what that means. Players We Love 2023 edition. We're going to keep it going strong here. Something you guys have done since way before I was here on the podcast, and I enjoy it quite a bit. So that's what will be the main focus on today's show. Plus, we had a bunch of random moves and news this weekend, so we'll get to all that a little bit later on. Chris Towers, you are our resident football guy. Thoughts on the Super Bowl? What'd you think?
It was a hold. It was the right call. It was kind of a disappointing way for the game to end. It was very kind of let all the air out of the building. I thought the broadcasters did a poor job of explaining that, yes, in fact, it was a penalty, and that calling a penalty is not a problem, even in an important part of a game. But it was a great game up until then.
Yeah, it was
the
awesome.
Chiefs probably were going to win either way in that circumstance.
Everything minus the halftime show was, whatever.
Oh no.
Were you big on the halftime show?
Oh, I just the internet loves Rihanna, and I think you're opening yourself up to some hate. I thought it was great. We got an appearance from
Mailbag
Nuno Betancourt, lead guitarist of Extreme. I had no idea he was Rihanna's guitarist, so that was a nice surprise. I don't know if anybody remembers the hair metal band Extreme, famous for their acoustic rock ballad "More Than Words."
Nope.
You guys don't know that song?
I mean,
is it a love ballad for the show?
Just saying those words means nothing to me. I might know it if I heard it, but
can you sing it? Can you sing us a ballad? It is Valentine's Day.
More than words is all you have to. No, I'm not going to keep doing it, but that's the song.
Come on, get your flashlight.
You guys know that one. It's a great song.
I do know that song, and that was a great rendition. And Chris, I've been attacked on Twitter and the internet for way worse than not liking a Rihanna.
So, I mean, sometimes you just got to kick the hornet's nest, right, to feel alive.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Scott, last year, one of my favorite things that we did all year long on the podcast was the fact that you had a certain wandering eye. Players we love.
I tend to get the wandering eye this time of year. Yes, you want me to commit to one player I love, but there's, I have a lot of love to go around, and so I don't know if the wandering eye is going to come into play on this particular Valentine's Day episode. I'd like to think I've grown as a person, but sometimes that eye just has a mind of its own.
You should do an episode. It's like The Bachelor. It's like Scott White's The Bachelor of fantasy, and just you're giving them all flowers, and you have to slowly tick them down. I think that might be something in the future, Frank.
I do have to say I'm disappointed in all of you. I mean, Valentine's Day and not wearing red. I guess I'm kind of wearing purple, which is more red adjacent, but I at least look a little more on theme than you guys.
I'm showing love to FIU. I love FIU. That's how I'm going to justify it.
That is fair.
I told you guys my face. I feel like my face is extra red right now, so I've got the red face, but maybe that's just my monitor or blood pressure or the sun. Yeah, I don't know what it is. By the way, the Super Bowl was in my backyard. Just want to point out to everybody that it was amazing here.
Wow, you got a really big backyard.
Very big backyard.
Yeah. How was the traffic?
My son, it was the worst thing you've ever seen. My son kept looking at me during the Super Bowl, by the way, and going, hey, I can't believe that it's right over there. And I'm like, I know, dude. And we're not there because that would be $10,000. And we would never celebrate a Valentine's Day or any holiday again if we ever got those tickets.
All right, well,
derail us.
Let's get into the players that we love. We'll start off with the hitters the first half. Later on in the podcast, we'll get into the pitchers that we love. And Scotty, we will start with you. Who is a hitter that you love this season?
Well, I want to preface this. I'm going to have to give away Chris's with my preface.
Well, then maybe I should go first.
Okay, go first.
Let's have Chris go first.
Because I don't want Scott to ruin his relationship immediately. So, I mean, look, sometimes you just see someone, and the first time you see them, you're just like, that is the most beautiful person I've ever seen. And that is how I feel about O'Neal Cruz. Everything about him is perfect. He's an Adonis. He's a specimen. And look, I don't know if he's a great baseball player yet, but he does so many baseball things about as well as you could possibly hope. The stat that I threw out the other day that just blew my mind is every single season of the StatCast era, which only goes back to 2015, but still, that's 8 seasons or so. Every single season leading up to 2022, Giancarlo Stanton had the hardest hit ball in baseball. 2022, he did not, because Oneil Cruz did. That was also the hardest hit ball in the history of the StatCast era, harder than any ball that Aaron Judge has hit, or Giancarlo Stanton, or Vladimir Guerrero, Shohei Ohtani, any of those guys. They pale in comparison to the greatness that is Oneil Cruz. Now, yes, he doesn't make contact as often as you would prefer necessarily, but even then, we saw towards the end of last season, if he can get his strikeout rate down to a just bad rate, if he can be a 30% strikeout rate guy, like early Aaron Judge, he can hit 270. We saw in September, he had a 288 batting average, 6 home runs, 5 steals. He is the kind of guy who absolutely could hit 40 home runs in a best case scenario season. I'm not saying that's likely. That's really, really hard to do, especially when you strike out as often as he does. But he reminds me a lot of Aaron Judge when he was young. The minor league numbers don't necessarily jump off the page the way you would expect, given the type of player they are, but clearly an incredibly talented player and someone that we talked about it the other day. It's just fun to have him on your team. It's fun to watch him. He gives you a reason to watch baseball. I mean, that is the type of player Oneil Cruz is. I love him. I am smitten.
And he plays for the Pirates. Like, when's the last time we could say the Pirates?
Andrew McCutcheon.
We were excited to watch.
That's it.
I mean, it was only a couple of years ago the player I loved was Brian Hayes. But we don't need to talk about the way
I still love
gone.
Brian Hayes.
Chris mentioned that if Oneil Cruz could just get his strikeout rate down to 30%, we could potentially see a huge season out of him. Well, from September 1st on last year, he played 29 games. He struck out 30% of the time, and he hit 288 with 6 home runs and 5 steals with a 17.7% barrel rate, which is just absolutely ridiculous. That is a 30 homer, 25 steal pace over 150 games. There's a lot of variance here. Chris mentioned it. Look, sometimes the person you love, let's be honest, they might have some warts. That's Oneil Cruz. He strikes out a lot. He struggles against left-handed pitching, but man, when he makes contact, he's going to hit it extremely hard. The ADP is 86.6. Scott, come to you with this one, because I know you like Oneil Cruz. You borderline love Oneil Cruz as well. Would you rather have Oneil Cruz or Wander Franco? Nearly the same ADP right now.
Well, it entirely depends on the scoring format, but presuming you're talking about a 5x5 roto league, then definitely Cruz by, probably like 4 rounds. If you're talking a points league, then Franco, because that strikeout disparity is so big.
Welsh, Oneil Cruz versus Wander Franco. Yeah, frankly, everyone on this podcast loves Oneil Cruz. I know you like him as well. What about him versus Wander Franco?
Well, Frank, it's funny. When I looked at the show sheet, I was like, oh, I guess we're doing like multiple of our Valentines today, because I see Chris with Oneil Cruz and then Welsh with my guy. And I thought you just put my other guy because I emailed you some names and Oneil Cruz was one of those guys because I absolutely do love him. Oneil Cruz is over Wander Franco. I would say the same thing as Scott said, like every format except points, I'm going to probably prioritize Wander Franco a little bit, but I have Oneil Cruz very high. He is a very, very big priority of mine. I love the idea too, because shortstop is so deep that like you can take what could be perceived as like a risk with him, and then you can pair him with like a lot more of a solid option. You could get injury crazy if you want, but like a Tim Anderson is someone that jumps out to me, but Tim is obviously a little bit injury prone, but like his floor comped as like your middle infielder with Oneil Cruz. I think the power and stolen bases are too crazy. And, you talked about what he did in that last month. It's a lot of what has also pushed and kind of created a lot of the projections, the crazy projection stuff we saw based off of Steamer's projections. That's a first round talent. That is first round production. There are only a handful of players that have even close to have put up those numbers last season. And that's first round. And that's why Oneil Cruz is so beautiful and really is all of our Valentine that we're like in grade school again. We're all fighting over the same guy, and Towers got to him first, and he gets to give that Valentine. And we all are just going to have to pick our second best, Scott.
And
yes.
Scott, with that, you are up with maybe your second favorite. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like my initial thought when you texted me, okay, give me a hitter and a pitcher you love, was Oneil Cruz. But Chris did respond before I did, and I got to thinking, like, do I really want to be in love with the most popular girl in school? Like, because that's the most popular girl in school, and I'm, me. So I should probably set my sights a little lower, be a little more realistic about this. And so I'm going with a prospect who hasn't really earned the looks of everyone on the playground yet. And that is Miguel Vargas. Miguel Vargas is the player I love. And I base this on more so than even Cruz. When I'm drafting and somebody else gets to Miguel Vargas first, that is when I feel the most pain. Like that's supposed to be my pick. Yes. Miguel Vargas, as I've talked about before, hit 300 everywhere he played in the minors. Great contact skills, good on base skills on top of it. Power that I think is being underestimated because of, it's just a really, really good looking, like just has such great hitting instincts and has the size and the athleticism, I think, to add on power. A very fast runner who hasn't run a ton in the minors, but has run enough to think he's going to be a help in that category. And then the thing for Miguel Vargas that really puts it all over the top for me is that while he's only eligible at first base now, sounds like he is the leading candidate for second base for the Dodgers this year. That's according to Andrew Friedman himself. And if he picks up eligibility at that position, I mean, that's really going to set Vargas apart. And beyond that, like, he primarily played third base in the minors, and the Dodgers like to move guys around. Is he going to pick up eligibility at third base at some point this year? There's been talk of him maybe playing left field in the long run. Does he pick up eligibility in the outfield at some point this year? This guy, in addition to just being an impressive hitting talent, could end up eligible at the three weakest positions in addition to first base this year, which would make him supremely valuable in fantasy. So Miguel Vargas is the hitter I love this year.
And there's a lot to love about him, Scott. As you referenced, makes a lot of contact, hits a lot of line drives. Last year in the minors, 304 batting average, 404 OBP. So not only does he hit well, but he has a great eye at the plate as well. 17 home runs, 16 steals, a 915 OPS in 113 games at AAA. The ADP as of now is 273.2. But Scott, I will remind everyone, we did a mock draft a couple of weeks ago, and he went at pick 186 in that draft. Over the past 2 weeks over at the NFBC,
it hurts
to 225. So, Scott, at what point does it get too high? Like, what price are you willing to pay when it comes to Miguel Vargas?
I have him ranked higher than either of those. I have him ranked, I think, in the 170 range. Which, I don't follow my rankings strictly when I'm drafting because I want to maximize the value of every pick. And if I know that Miguel Vargas normally goes outside the top 200, then I'm going to try to hold out until then. But if this becomes a trend, and I will point out that, the last two mock drafts we did, Miguel Vargas got pulled way up. I think it was the same guy who took him both times. So there's somebody else who Miguel Vargas has caught his eye as well. And maybe there will be a little competition there, but I think I can come out ahead in that one. So we'll see. We'll see where the trends go with Miguel Vargas, but wherever they wind up, I think I'm going to be the leading contender to
suitor number one.
Him. Yeah.
Second suitor. You won't be the second suitor.
I won't
You'll be suitor number one.
I don't even know how the Bachelor works. Like, how many roses do you give out? Whatever. Scott's giving a rose to Miguel Vargas. That's what's happening, I guess, in this instance. And I'm looking at your rankings right now, Scott, which people can find on the site. cbssports.com/fantasy/baseball/rankings/ there's a lot of slash. Miguel Vargas is pick 160 in your ranks.
Oh yeah. I underestimated my own love for him. 160.
You do love him. I have him at 190 coming into the offseason. I thought I loved him, but Turns out it was false love.
Not as
I only
much.
like him. Welsh, I'm going to give you 2 names here because obviously we know that you specialize in the world of prospects. Everyone go check out the Welsh's prospect podcast, Prospect One. Who would you rather have just for this season, Miguel Vargas or Tristan Casas from the Red Sox?
Ooh, that is actually a very, very good question. I'm going to go with Miguel Vargas. I'm also on the Miguel Vargas uptick train right now. I love the idea that he's going to get that second base spot. I also think from like a floor standpoint, Miguel Vargas just brings a lot to the table. I mean, he's not a big high strikeout guy. He's a much bigger contact player. Dodgers team creates a lot of great opportunity. Obviously, Tristan Casas with the big power. I just think there's even a better floor, and it's actually really fascinating positionally, like what he can provide you this year. I moved him up pretty dramatically, and he's actually one of those guys that just does not equate to what any really draft system, wherever you draft, obviously here at CBS even, that you wouldn't see like where he's dropping off on boards and in draft rooms compared to where he's actually going. Like, everyone is trying to get him. He's pushing up into those like 180s, 160. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the 130s if it's a really good camp. Everyone feels really comfortable with it. I love Miguel Vargas, and I would go over.
I don't like to hear this, Chris Welsh.
I'm sorry.
I'm
I'm sliding in the DMs.
You're making Miguel Vargas the hitter you love. Is that what you're saying right now?
No, I didn't say. Well, I'm of this scenario. I am. I will tell you this, which is going to probably not make you feel happy. Right now, he is like my number one prospect target because Corbin Carroll is at an all-time high. I want to have my shares. Gunnar Henderson might be number one because I actually think he's still being a little bit undervalued. But after that, like, yes, everyone's sleeping on Jordan Walker, but Miguel Vargas is all but guaranteed. So if I'm going for a rookie right now at a position that is not great at second base, it's Miguel Vargas over anybody else.
Now, is this just like an attraction you're feeling, or is this the player you love?
Listen, I have to take them out a little bit. I've got to figure it out. Like, I don't know what my full love of prospects is going to be until I spend enough time, and we're close. Listen, we've known each other. We've known each other for a long time, Scott. Me and Miguel have back in the backfield.
So you have. It sounds like you might even have a little more of the wandering eye than I do, because I got to tell you, within this group here, given the lack of competition for old Vinny P, who I thought was going to be too attractive of a target himself, my eye might be wandering over in Vinny P's direction.
Oh,
I don't know. Sounds like everyone else is giving old Vinny the cold shoulder. I don't. You know, he deserves to be asked to the dance, at least.
You said something I think it's actually really interesting about this. Like, as soon as a guy goes and like your heart, you go, oh, like it just hurts when the guy goes. That really tells you the thing. And I will say this: I don't think I have like I get punched in the stomach when Miguel Vargas goes. I definitely go like I'm.
You don't deserve him.
Yeah, so maybe we're not meant for each other at the end of the day. You and Miguel seem to have that set. The guy that I have when we get to it is a gut punch whenever I don't get him. So that's why I put my eyes to a certain outfielder in the NL.
I'll stick to Miguel for now, but I got old Vinny P in my back pocket just in case. Just in case. I like to keep my options open,
We can tell.
That player, Scott White. Anywho, let's get back to the Welsh. Find out the hitter that he loves this season, besides Miguel Vargas.
That player is Mr. Lars Nootbaar, if I can even say the name. That just send me into a rattle here. Lars Nootbaar, every time he goes, I'm absolutely devastated if it's not on my team. I want to have all the shares I possibly can. It's a beautiful Savant page. You'll see 14 homers last year. Only hit 228, had an expected batting average that was a little bit closer to 250, which is nice. An average EV that was close to 92. Some great max EVs at 113. A really great 46% hard hit percentage. Barrel, I think, was a little over 12%. All of these things equate to this really, really solid leadoff hitter if they give him that spot. That's what I saw back in the Arizona Fall League. Projections are pretty decent on him, even the lowest of the lowest, which tends to be the Bat X, and it's only around 120 games. I don't really care about the outfield mix that they've got out there. Obviously, Jordan Walker plays a role in that. Tyler O'Neill is coming back, and where does Dylan Carlson go? Lars Nootbaar is the guy that I think is locked into this. Frank even has on his notes that he's been working with Driveline. this is the guy that I want with really manageable K numbers, good walk numbers. I think he's a prototypical leadoff player, and I think he can be a 2010 player in the majors that is going way, way late. So I've got him. I'm probably one of the highest in the space if you look at all like consensus ranks on Lars Nootbaar. He is my Valentine. I have to have a Lars Nootbaar every Valentine and in every draft. And if I don't, I'm going to be disappointed. And I will tell you this, my eye doesn't wander. I don't, when it is Lars Nootbaar time, I'm not looking around at anybody else. No rookies, no old Cougar players. I'm looking at Lars Nootbaar. So we're locked in.
It is fitting because it sounds like a candy bar also.
It does.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You
You know, like,
fat?
you know, when you used to hand out,
because it's Valentine's Day.
when you used to hand out the little Valentine's cards, you know, it'd be like, you know, you'd buy a pack and they'd all be with a certain cartoon theme on them, you know, and you'd have 4 different choices, and you'd pick out one that you'd give to the girls you have a crush on. You'd pick out one that you'd give to all your best friends.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 were like, whatever, you know, and sometimes kids would include candy with it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the rich kids. No, those were the kids you wanted to be friends with. And, you know, yeah, exactly like Chris was saying, like, maybe someone included a little Nootbaar.
Hey, I literally, I'm not even joking. Before we started this show, I was downstairs helping both of my kids do all of their Valentine's Day stuff, helping my son make a Valentine's box, which, by the way, shout out to him for wanting a Rubik's Cube box. That's what he wants because he loves Rubik's Cubes. So I helped him make a box for all of that. And we've got the candies and we're signing all the candies. And listen, I'm not going to say I didn't put one of the Warhead Dippin' Sticks for Lars for later. I'm not saying I stole one to send to Lars, but I'm not saying I didn't, my friends.
Yeah. He sounds like a real, like, you know, like an Austrian hunk too, right? Like I
mean, it is one of the I think upsets of the World Baseball Classic is that the guy named Lars Nootbaar is not on the Netherlands team. He's actually playing for Japan, which is really cool. His mom, I think, is Japanese, so I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is awesome. Welsh, everything you said, I echo. I had him in Breakouts 1.0. Not going to try and steal your thunder here. I wouldn't say that I love him. I like him. I like Lars Nootbaar quite a bit. But for all the reasons you mentioned, he walks as much as he does. 14.7% walk rate, 6th best among hitters with at least 300 plate appearances last season. So, man, if he's hitting well, there's a chance that he is leading off for this team. And he could be really, really special, specifically in a head-to-head points league.
You know who he reminds me of? And it's a fitting comp because they both came up with the Cardinals kind of out of nowhere. Is Tommy Pham. That's who I think of when it's a different swing profile. And obviously Tommy Pham's a righty, Lars Nootbaar's bats lefty, and Lars Nootbaar's a little more pull heavy, which that was always one reason why Tommy Pham's really impressive quality of contact numbers never quite led to the kind of production we'd hope for, especially as a power hitter, but like very, very good athlete, incredibly strong. You know, Tommy Pham, I think, was a little bit older when he finally got his chance, but Nootbaar was like a non-entity on prospect rankings before 2021. I mean, you look at, I was looking at Baseball Prospectus. He wasn't listed before 2022's list, preseason list. I don't think he ever made Fangraphs like top 30 prospects for the Cardinals. So, yeah, he's kind of, a little Cardinals devil magic.
Yeah, so not just Cardinals devil magic, but Driveline Baseball devil magic, because he had been working with them since 2020, I believe, to increase the velocity of his swing. And so that's where this power came from for Nootbaar, after already having a good batting eye. Yeah, he's a player. Look, I wrote down 6 hitter names as potential hitters I love. Nootbaar was on that list.
Oh, you're looking at my guys there, Scott.
I'm just saying, you stick to Nootbaar, I'll stick to Vargas. That's
I want to point out one thing.
I only did O'Neill Cruz, so my love is most pure.
It does sound most pure.
You have a lot of competition, Chris. You may wind up with no date to the prom. Just saying.
On Lars Nootbaar, one thing I've been waiting for since the AFL was during the AFL, there was a rumor that went out from a couple of reporters when he was here was because he really started to get some more traction that he copyrighted his full name to, obviously this is name likeness, but for a candy bar, for like a nutrition bar. I'm sorry, not a candy bar, but
Wow.
that he had copyrighted to have his own branded nutrition energy bar or whatever made, and we haven't had that. We get a big breakout year, we might officially get the Lars Nootbaar.
Who was the last
coming your
player
way.
with a candy bar? I know we had an O. Henry. There was something since O. Henry, right? So that was like a Hank Aaron thing, right?
Yeah.
Am I making that up?
I don't know.
Somebody
Babe
had a
Ruth? I was
candy
going to say
bar.
Babe Ruth.
Somebody had a candy bar in the 90s. I'm going to look this up.
I was like, yeah, Babe Ruth is a little bit too obvious for me. If it's pop
Clark
culture
bar?
related, I probably don't know about it. So
Did you say the
Clark
Wilk
bar.
Clark? Oh, the Reggie bar. That was another one.
There you go.
Are these real? We should have a round table of all athlete candy bars, and we can try them, all 2 of them.
yeah, I was
There's
gonna
no
say,
way
when-
there's that many.
do we even
when
count them
Henry-
on one hand, or
No,
Henry
Henry was not a
Rodriguez-
Hank Aaron thing. I just made that up. I'm a liar.
How many athlete-based
Oh,
food
I thought it
products
was.
have been created then? Let's move past candy bars for a second.
There
How many
was an Albert
athlete-based-
Bell bar from Malley's Chocolate. There was
And
a
I bet
Wade
it was
Boggs
really difficult to
352
chew
bar.
into. Okay.
There was a Jose Canseco 4040 bar.
uh-oh.
It probably had more than chocolate in it.
Yeah.
Um,
Artificial sweeteners.
And the Warren Cromartie Crowbar, which was sold at the entrances to Olympic Stadium.
That's good.
Cecil Fielder had one. I remember that one.
That makes sense.
Uh,
Why couldn't we get a Prince Fielder bar? That would,
Yeah,
All right,
exactly. Big old.
when Henry Rodriguez broke out for the Expos in the mid '90s, and he would hit home runs in Olympic Stadium, they'd shower the field with O. Henry bars for him. That was a
Okay,
thing.
maybe that's what I was remembering.
all right.
And there was
That's pretty
the
awesome.
last but not least, certainly, the Travis Hafner Pronk Bar.
What is it called? A pronk
The
bar?
Pronk Bar. That was
That
his
doesn't
nickname.
sound
You remember?
okay. I
Half,
don't,
half
apparently
Project
I
Half
don't.
Donkey. He was
That was,
Pronk.
yeah.
He was
Oh,
great.
okay. Yeah, no.
Oh man,
What
this
is-
show's coming off the rails.
What that
Anywho,
taste like?
let's rein us back in here. Players we love. We got one more hitter I want to talk about, and frankly, I thought I would have some competition for this one too. You know, Scott might have a few words to say about this one, but
I'm gonna check out your girl over here.
I'm
Gonna
going
steal
with
your
good old-
girl.
I'm going with good old Corey Seager.
Ah,
the
that's
one
one of the
player.
6.
That he is the one. Every draft that I enter, regardless of format, he is the player that I want to come away with. Awesome first season. Well, not awesome. It was a successful first season with the Rangers, I would call it. Career high 33 home runs, 91 runs, 83 RBI. The one blemish, he hit 245. However, the expected batting average, according to StatCast, is 283. Last year, Corey Seager lost 25 hits to the shift, according to Sports Info Solutions. And if he had those 25 hits, you can't just assume he would have got all of them. But let's just assume that his batting average would have been 287, which is very close to his expected batting average. Hits the ball hard in the air. And oddly enough, had some weird home road splits, a 901 OPS at home last year, 645 on the road. You know, maybe at home comes down a little bit, but he's going to be better on the road this upcoming season. And he's going to be better in general now that there are shift restrictions. So Scotty, me and you might have to duke it out for this one, but Corey Seager is the player I want in every draft this season.
It's so hard, you know, because I've brought up Vinny P in the context of the Wandering Eye. I've brought up Corey Seager and O'Neal Cruz as 2 players that I'd like to love. If it wasn't so difficult, because here's what makes it difficult. You know, I've stressed a lot position scarcity at the start of drafts, the need to get a third baseman early, the need to get, you know, a good part of your outfield filled early. I'd like to get a second baseman pretty early too. That's more of a want than a need. The more I look into it, that leaves first base and shortstop. Like you can't draft every position early, and those are the positions that most afford you the chance to wait. So as much as I love Corey Seager, O'Neal Cruz, Vinny Pasquantino, you know, it's and unless like my best chance of getting them is if things go wrong early, you know, because I at some point I have to draft some pitchers, right? It's hard to drift. It's hard to fit them in, is what I'm trying to say. As much as I may love them in theory, it's hard to fit them in.
Is Scott White the Leo DiCaprio of this podcast? Is he just continuously burning and churning through different players? I mean, I suppose they're not all under 24, especially when you bring up Corey Seager. But Scott, you definitely have an eye all around you. You don't stick too long into one love.
Well, the
Mr.
fact that
Scott
Scott chose Miguel Vargas is very Leonardo DiCaprio-esque.
It is very,
Hey.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not going to
Little
say
old.
it's fine.
Little
We'll
old,
just move on.
actually. I've been told that my eyes are set similarly to Leonardo DiCaprio.
I couldn't think of a 19-year-old prospect off the top of my head, so we'll just keep moving.
Well, do we have any 19-year-olds? What, Jackson
Drew
Churio?
Jones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Drew
Jackson
Jones.
Churio.
Yeah, there you
Jackson
go.
Churio. Drew Jones. There you go.
That works. Anywho,
That'll be next.
last point on Corey Seager. His ADP is 50.2. Scott, the only problems that I've run into are what you're saying, is the fact that shortstop is one of the deepest positions. But even with that, I just need to start training myself that if we get into the 5th round of a points league, I'm going to take him. You know, depending on where I'm drafting and if I have stolen bases early, you know, maybe I have to wait till like late 5th, early 6th round in a roto league, in a categories league. But either way, I want Corey Seager. I want him on my team this year.
Frank, I did want to tell you, on Wednesday, the camp's open out here in Arizona where I am, and I actually plan to go to the Rangers on Wednesday. So maybe I will try to find Corey, and maybe I could get a little special message just for you from Corey Seager if I can get around it. Maybe just a little like, hey, Frank,
All right.
shouts up. Thank you. I'm going to look for it.
I will be texting you after this podcast. A special message from a man, Corey.
We'll try.
Yeah.
All right. Before we hit the break, I want to remind everyone to join our Facebook group if you haven't already. Fantasy Baseball Today. We've got a whole bunch of people asking questions right now. Keeper questions, dynasty, draft-related questions, anything that you have, you can join up. Facebook.com/groups/Fantasy Baseball Today. Ask away and have fun with the community. Speaking of community, if you have subscribed or you checked us out here on YouTube, thank you. We appreciate it. We have a community tab here on YouTube where we put out a bunch of polls and ask questions and graphics, ask for your favorite players. So there's a lot going on there. Make sure to interact on our YouTube community poll if you haven't already. Let's take a break and we'll be back right after this.
You and I have traveled to the far reaches of space. But something's different now. This is the end, my friend. Got it!
Equality gets no timeouts, or tryouts, or second chances. February reminds us we can change our circumstances.
We give thanks to the athletes who took big risks, who beat the odds despite being oddballs because of their skin. But to change the status quo, you have to be willing when silence is comfortable. Speaking out is an act of resistance. This is the month we remember.
But more important, we dream.
Of something bigger.
All right, let's get into those news and notes. I mentioned there was a lot going on this weekend, and we had a few trades, a few signings. We'll start off with AJ Puck, who was traded to the Marlins in exchange for JJ Bleday, former first-round picks, both of them being swapped here between Oakland and Miami. Obviously, Chris Towers, there was a recent report that Puck was going to compete for a spot in the A's rotation. Find that a little bit tougher now that he's headed over to Miami.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty unlikely. I mean, you can never have too much starting pitching. I think that's one of the things that, you know, the Marlins have plenty of starting pitching. Well, last year they didn't, you know, like that. Starting pitchers get hurt and they might reach a point a week into training camp where they're down 2 starting pitchers, and it wouldn't really surprise me. So we'll see there. But I was reading a piece in the Miami Herald today about the Marlins, and it actually sounds like there's a pretty good chance they're going to go with a 6-man rotation, at least to start the season. But it was not AJ Puck who was mentioned in that. AJ Puck was mentioned as one of their relief options. So is Braxton Garrett, who seems likely to open the season in the rotation. So you've got obviously Sandy Alcantara, Johnny Cueto, Jesus Luzardo, Edward Cabrera, Trevor Rogers, and Braxton Garrett. I would think AJ Puck is going to be in the bullpen. I think there's a decent chance he's the closer because, you know, he's a hard thrower, good stuff, could profile in that way. I know there are some concerns about, you know, whether he'll be able to pitch like every day or something like that with his injury history. But I do think there's a chance he's just the best pitcher out of the bullpen for the Marlins. I like the trade. I think there was a lot of confusion around the trade, but I don't really think JJ Bleday is going to become anything, and I certainly don't think he's going to become anything in Oakland for fantasy purposes. So I think there's a chance AJ Puck is the more relevant of the two players for fantasy this year.
Between the Marlins bringing in Puck and Matt Barnes, just feels like, and they have a new manager. It's not Don Mattingly anymore. I don't really know what the plan is for the ninth inning. Dylan Flora was doing fine at the end of last season, so I think the presumption is he'll just get the first shot out of the gate. But I don't know. It doesn't feel like I have a very firm grasp of that bullpen.
I'm going with Barnes as the guy, but I think Craig Mish had also reported that they might view AJ Puck kind of like in how OG Josh Hader was originally kind of treated, where, Hader wasn't like a actual closer. Sometimes he'd be kind of like a fireman, sometimes he'd come in the 7th and the 8th. I kind of feel like Puck might be used in a role like that. Like early on, it's going to be in a 7 or 8. Barnes probably has the most closing experience out of the group. That's why I think he's going to close. But Puck is a guy that at the end of the year, maybe we look at having like 10 to 12 saves overall. And then he's a guy for next year because he still has a lot of trust to build back up. He's got to be able to throw strikes again, and he's got to be able to stay healthy. So I just don't think he's an early season option, but I really do think he's a good keeper league buy right now because he might be closing for this team in July or at least next year.
Again, that is AJ Puck getting traded over to the A's. The other side of the deal, Scott, JJ Bleday played 65 games with the Marlins last season. He hit 167 with 5 homers, 4 steals, a lot of walks, 12.6% walk rate, but also lots of strikeouts, 28%. Roster Resource has the A's outfield as Bleday, Esteury Ruiz, and Ramon Laureano. Anything here with JJ Bleday?
And he hit 229 at AAA Jacksonville last year. You know why the A's got him? Because he walks a lot, as you pointed out. This is an old school Moneyball acquisition. But I'm with Chris in that it's like I don't have a lot of confidence that JJ Bleday is going to amount to anything in fantasy, and certainly I have to see some evidence of that before I make any kind of investment in him.
The Dodgers had a busy weekend. They signed David Peralta to a 1-year deal. Peralta was fine last year. He hit 251 with 12 home runs and a 731 OPS. Some interesting things kind of under the hood. He changed the launch angle, finally, career high 41% fly ball rate, and he hits the ball really hard. So it would not surprise me if the Dodgers kind of figure David Peralta out, at least against right-handed pitching. Welsh, I'm kind of worried about who loses playing time here. As of now, Roster Resource has Chris Taylor on the bench. I think they're paying him $12 or $15 million a year. I don't think that I buy that. They have Trace Thompson in center field as of now, but I think it's probably going to be Taylor in center and Miguel Vargas at second base, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I've never got the Trace Thompson stuff, so I just don't know why he became anointed the can't leave outfielder. Because as soon as this went down, everyone's like, "Oh, R.I.P. James Outman." Like, yeah, maybe, but I would rather have James Outman out there than Trace Thompson. So I'm not really sure. I don't also believe that Chris Taylor's a guy that's going to lose an exceptional amount of playing time. I think he's the guy that plays that super util. The thing to think about with this Peralta deal, and just kind of overall, they have so many pieces that are moving around. That outfield doesn't really have a great defensive mindset. And David Peralta comes in as like a Gold Glove outfielder that can come in and really be a big piece to that and gives them a little bit more stability so they can have everything focused in one area. And that can be center field. I mean, there's also talk about Mookie Betts playing more second base this year, which is going to mess everything up as well and might take a bit away from Vargas if that were to happen.
That's one thing that I guess we'll talk about it when we get to the starting pitcher preview a little more, but Dodgers up the middle defense looks kind of shaky right now.
A little dicey.
I don't know. Gavin Lux, he's probably fine at short, but if Vargas is going to play a lot of third, or Vargas is going to play a lot of second. They don't really have a good center fielder on the roster. This is a team that, you look at the success that their pitchers have had over the past couple seasons, and they've had guys really outperform their peripherals a lot. And I think Julio Urias is going to continue to do that because he's one of those guys who gets a lot of soft contact. But if it's not to the extent it has been in the past few years, and it's not, we don't get that Tyler Anderson kind of outcome for some of those lower end guys, it's one thing to keep in mind with, Noah Syndergaard, who Frank, I know you like a little bit, and Tony Gonsolin, who outperforms his peripherals pretty regularly. It's a situation where that they could go from between that and the shift, they could go from being exceptional outliers to just being maybe just a good defense, which could cost their guys some runs.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a fair point. Something we'll talk about in the pitching previews. The Dodgers also signed former top prospect Alex Reyes to a 1-year, $1.1 million deal, which comes with a $3 million option for 2024. And apparently he will miss the first few months of the season as he rehabs from a shoulder procedure. Scott, let's not forget, Reyes had 29 saves with a 3.24 ERA just one season ago in 2021. The problem, lots of walks and lots of injuries. So we just don't know when we're going to see.
This isn't the kind of move you like to see the Dodgers make, though, just because the Dodgers shouldn't be rescuing these high upside players from the scrap heap for nothing. Any team could have signed Alex Reyes, but it's the Dodgers who, of course it is.
Yeah. So we'll see if they can get anything out of him, but wouldn't surprise me. Right now they have Daniel Hudson and
Evan Phillips.
Evan Phillips is someone that we've heard rumored.
Brewstar
Gratterall, Alex Vesia. So they've got some names back there, but they don't really have a lockdown closer. Dodgers do.
Not a clear front runner. I agree.
And
just statistically, Evan Phillips is the one who'd like to see win it. He was one of the best relievers in baseball last year, but I'm thinking Daniel Hudson's the front runner coming back from injury, just because he was the front runner going into last year, and then he got hurt, and that's why they ended up with Kimbrel.
And I think they've also they've kind of been a little bit dicey about Evan Phillips jumping into that role, because I think, again, that fireman type of thing, being able to move him around. I will tell you one thing, out here in Arizona, the reasons to go out to extended spring training is usually not big. There might be an international guy or two. Alex Reyes, I expect to be rehabbing here during extended spring training for the first month or two. That is going to be a reason for me to go out and see if I can ever get him throwing, my friends. And I will be watching, because I loved Alex Reyes.
He had I believe he had the second most 100-mile-per-hour pitches as a starting pitcher last season in baseball. He was way, way behind Hunter Green, who had, this is one of my favorite stats, 46% of all 100-mile-per-hour pitches thrown by a starting pitcher last season, which is just an absolutely bonkers stat. But Alex Reyes was second.
Already, Christian Javier signed a 5-year, $64 million extension with the Astros, which seems like, on paper, a great get for the Houston Astros. We'll see. Javier's a little bit unproven, but man, what we've seen so far, he's been awesome for Houston. The Cubs signed Michael Fulmer, which is another bullpen. It's pretty wide open for saves right now. It was Brandon Hughes to end the season last year. They signed Brad Boxberger and Julian Merriweather this offseason. They still have Adbert Alzolay and Rowan Wick on the roster. Scott, do you have a feel here for who you're targeting for saves in Chicago?
If I have to pick somebody, I'm going to pick Brandon Hughes, but he's left-handed, and it's not like he was getting every single save chance down the stretch. This is one of those really messy situations, and there's about, how many is there? There's about 7 or 8 of them where you're only going to draft them very late in a deep rotisserie league, because it's just a stab in the dark almost.
Another very kind of messy bullpen right now is the Diamondbacks. Andrew Chafin signed a 1-year, $6.25 million deal with Arizona, and he's been really good 2 years in a row now. I have no clue who will lead this team in saves either. Welsh, my latest flavor of the month has been Scott McGough. Some people, who is Scott McGough?
Scott McGough.
He had 69 saves in Japan the last 2 years, and
nice.
I've heard his name kind of mentioned when, throwing around closer and saves in Arizona. So he's a name I'm looking at.
It's one of those out there. Kevin Ginkel's been my guy. I'm actually banking on Kevin Ginkel. I will say this, though. I think it's really interesting bringing another left-hander into the bullpen, because up until this, it was pretty much Joe Mantiply, and he was their best reliever last year. It makes me wonder if getting another serviceable lefty to get in there would make the team a little bit more comfortable giving that role over to Mantiply. I don't know if they're going to end up, picking one major guy. We forget Melanson is still there.
Yeah,
I think Ginkel was one of the best. So Melanson might steal some. I think Ginkel gets an opportunity. He made a bunch of big improvements, but Mantiply was the best reliever of all the guys. I actually think, coming back, I've said it 3 times now, but a lot of teams are implementing this like fireman role of guys that they want to put in the highest leverage situations. I think Mantiply could be the big leverage situation guy, which could take him 7, 8, or 9 and get saves. And I think Chafin actually gives this a little bit more of an opportunity, because then you're not just destroying your only lefty in the bullpen by saving them in the 9th inning. So just something to throw out.
Yeah, fair point there. Much like we've heard this offseason, Jordan Walker will attend big league spring training with a chance to compete for the Cardinals' opening day starting role in right field, per John Denton of MLB.com. Vaughn Grissom might begin the season at AAA if the Braves decide to start Orlando Arcia at shortstop. That is obviously a spring training position battle to watch very closely. Bo Bichette plans to be more aggressive on the base paths in 2023, according to Keegan Matheson of MLB.com. Freddie Peralta has, quote, no injury concerns leading into camp. Peralta was limited to just 78 innings last season due to a recurring shoulder injury. Nestor Cortez will not pitch for Team USA due to a hamstring injury, which will shut him down for a few weeks. Per MLB.com, Ryan Nelson, Dre Jameson, and Tommy Henry are candidates for the D-backs' 5th spot in the rotation. Welsh, notice they left Brendan Pfaadt out of there. I think we all really like Pfaadt. I don't know that he will realistically be considered for the 5th starter job, at least on opening day.
Agreed. Okay, I completely agree with that.
Marlins manager Skip Schumacher said that Joey Wendell will be the team's starting shortstop. Fun times.
Look, when you got 19 shortstops on your roster, one of them, or second baseman on your roster, one of them's going to have to play shortstop. That's just the fact of the matter.
It'd be like that sometimes. Sixto Sanchez told the reporter that he lost 46 pounds this offseason. That is a lot of poundage. Sanchez hasn't pitched since 2020 and has had multiple shoulder surgeries over the past couple of years. Few smaller rumors just to pay attention to. The Yankees have maintained contact with Jurickson Profar, while the Padres have checked in on Michael Wacha, which frankly makes a ton of sense because as of now, their 4th starter is Nick Martinez and their 5th starter is Seth Lugo. So Padres could use some help. Let's get into pitchers we love. Last time Chris started us off. Let's go with Scotty. Who is a pitcher that you love here, Scotty?
Yeah, so I think there always tends to be a lot of love for the young guys, right? The up and comers. Maybe they got a lot of sizzle on their pitches, and that gets the steam coming out of your ears, and that's the one they love. But I'm going to somebody who I think has been given up on a little too soon, and I don't know if it's a she's all that situation, because there's former glory that can be restored here. It's not like
kind of an opposite.
Yeah.
She's all that. It's more like Estella's got her groove back.
Okay. Good. Yeah, that's better. Chris Sale. Chris Sale is the pitcher. And frankly, I think there should be more people sniffing around him because he hasn't really done anything to fall out of favor other than be hurt. And last year, it was a stress fracture in his rib cage. It was a fractured wrist later on. Remember, he came back and made like 2 starts and fractured his wrist. These are not
on a bicycle, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes. Yeah, and then he punched the thing at the minor league spring training. Like, he's got a cavalcade of interesting ways to get hurt.
These are not normal pitching injuries, though. These are not the sort of things where you worry about lingering effects or recurrences, really. These are just kind of fluky things that Chris Sale has suffered. Chris Fail. I don't know.
Chris fails. Ooh, that
Freudian slip there. I didn't mean it, Chris. I didn't mean it. And remember, like at this time last year, we were all pretty enthusiastic about him returning because he had come back from Tommy John surgery the previous year. RA, 11K per 9. The whip was kind of high because the control was a little off. It's pretty normal coming back from Tommy John surgery. But I feel like we should be in the same place as last year, enthusiasm-wise, because a stress fracture in the rib cage and a fractured wrist, like that's just not something. It just feels like fatigue, right? Like hype fatigue for Chris Sale. But I'm not fatigued. I think he's beautiful still. And I want every bit of him I can. And it hurts. It hurts, kind of like I was saying for Miguel Vargas. When Chris Sale is taken, that's how you know it's love. Because it hurts when somebody else gets there first.
That's amore.
Love hurts, baby. 9 starts for Chris Sale in 2021. Each of his FIP, XFIP, Sierra, and XERA were 3.69 or lower. And the velocity, something we've focused on a lot throughout Chris Sale's career, has looked great in the limited 2021 and 2022 sample sizes. The ADP is 159 as the 48th starting pitcher off the board. Scott, real quick, 48 and a third innings pitched the last 2 years for Sale, 147 and a third back in 2019. What is your innings expectation this season for Sale?
I think it's going to be like I was saying for Justin Verlander last year. I don't think you can apply the usual innings management rules to somebody like this, has several years of accumulating 200 plus innings and is clearly in the latter stages of his career. 170, 175, kind of like we saw from Verlander last year. I think that's within the realm, as long as he doesn't do anything crazy, punching walls or falling off bikes. But I don't think he will. I think he's, I think I'm going to help him get his head right.
Part of the concern, I guess, is just that we haven't seen him pitch like a really high level pitcher since 2018, and we haven't seen a full season of it since 2017. So that would be the only real knock against him. But I agree. I think the price is fine, and I think there's some delayed, like, we always thought he would get hurt. Now he got hurt, and this is just like time catching up to him. But I don't know if that's actually fair, because like you said, the Tommy John surgery, that was bad. That's not what you want. But the injuries last year were mostly bad luck and bad decision making, which, Chris Sale's a weird dude. I guess I can't say for sure he won't go on, off-road biking or punching TVs. It's within the realm of possibility for Chris Sale. He's a bad boy. And Scott loves a bad boy.
Him. That's right.
But I just Chris Sale. I'll one of the funniest things that's ever happened in Major League Baseball is Chris Sale like almost demanding a trade because his teammate's son wasn't allowed in the locker room. Just the funniest thing that's ever happened.
Forgot about that. Shout out to Adam LaRoche.
Yeah.
Drake
I think
LaRoche.
that's the funniest thing that's happened in his career.
No,
I think him cutting up the scissors.
The jerseys was very funny as well. But like, I believe former White Sox outfielder Adam Eaton referred to 14-year-old Drake LaRoche as a leader in their clubhouse.
That tells you everything that you need to know. Chris, let's stick with you here. Who is a pitcher that you love this season?
Scott was disparaging about our love for the young sexiness and the hard throwers and whatnot, but I'm going to go right to it. Edward Cabrera. Very few pitchers throw harder than him. Perhaps no pitchers throw a changeup harder than him. If anybody does, it's Sandy Alcantara. And look, that's an interesting comp. Obviously I don't think Edward Cabrera is going to become the, innings eating dominant ace that Sandy Alcantara has. Edward Cabrera might have fewer career innings than Sandy Alcantara had last season. Don't fact check me on that, but it might be close. But as a pitcher, he shares a lot of similarities. Throws really, really hard, does a very good job of limiting hard contact. He's got that changeup that he can throw 95. I think he had one at 96 miles per hour last season, averaged 93 with it. Has the potential to be a very, very good pitch. Obviously, we've seen with the Marlins over the past couple of years, every single person who pitches for them seems to come to the majors with a very, very good changeup. That's what they do. But last season we saw, his curveball start to develop a little bit more as a swing and miss pitch. The fastball usage actually being pretty low, I think, is a good thing because, the fastball is kind of always the thing that the young pitchers lean on. And Edward Cabrera last season only threw his fastball, if you combine the sinker and the four seamer 31% of the time, I think that's a sign of maturity as a pitcher. It's a pretty good pitch. It doesn't get the kind of swings and misses that you would necessarily think for someone who can dial it up to 100. But Edward Cabrera, I think it's a very, very good skill set. And I think the Marlins have earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to developing pitchers. So when you get a chance to take a swing at a very talented young pitcher who has shown the ability to get outs at the major league level, and he's outside of the top 300, I'm pretty sure in ADP, or top 200 in ADP, I'm gonna do that every day, and I'm gonna love it.
Yeah, it comes with the prospect pedigree too. You mentioned a lot of these things, Chris. He throws extremely hard. He's got the secondary pitches, gets ground balls, limits hard contact. The one knock is the control. 4.1 walks per 9 to this point in his career. 3+ walks in 8 of 14 starts last year. you made the Sandy comp, right? And some people might not remember this. Prior to 2021, Sandy Alcantara had a 4 walks per 9 on the nose, and he improved. He got better. So it's possible for a young pitcher to improve their control and their command. I'm not saying it's going to happen all in one season for Edward Cabrera. He's going to still have his hiccups, but he is someone that I do like quite a bit myself, Chris. The ADP is 243.2. He's the 69th starting pitcher off the board. Going around some other interesting young pitchers as well, Chris. Reed Detmers, Hunter Brown. Would you rather have Edward Cabrera over both of those guys?
I guess Brown, maybe you'd rather have him just because he does have that SPARP eligibility for your points leagues. But other than that, I think Cabrera is I think it's just a more talented pitcher than either of those two guys. So I'll take the chance on him.
All right. Welshie, you are up. A pitcher you love this season.
Well, I'm going to preface this, that my eye is wandering a little bit because who Frank is going to bring up is my number one. It is my number one of number ones. Frank has it. Frank knows we've talked about this off air. He is the number one guy, but I will talk about one of my favorite young pitchers in baseball right now, because the inverse of what you just talked about with Edward Cabrera. I mean, this guy does throw pretty hard. He's got walk issues. This guy does not have walk issues. And it's George Kirby with the Mariners. 4%, top 4% in the league in walk percentage as a rookie. Now, the K percentage just wasn't great. It was 24.5%. So if you K minus walk, you're in the 20s, which is not a fantastic number. But you've got 4+ pitches. We got 6 pitches overall, but 4 pitches that he's throwing at a 10% or higher clip. And then if you get all of them, 6 at 8% or more. And really what you're looking at is like a high command pitcher that can hit every point in the zone. It's really fascinating looking at the charts where he has got a pitch for every point of the zone, and it's pinpoint. Changeups on the left side, everything on the end, fastballs he can bring up. That's something he really worked on early on. I really like George Kirby. The floor is so immense because of the great command and the low walk numbers. You got a great offense behind you. You also have great pitchers as far as tutelage goes around. He's kind of a student of the game in general. I love Logan Gilbert because of the hard worker he is. Luis Castillo could bring a big part of the game to him. And he's got an ADP that's outside the top 100. So it's a little dangerous getting in on young pitchers. But this is a guy that I want to do that with. Side note to Nick Lodolo. That would be another one of those guys that I kind of put into that list. But I wouldn't want both of them. I don't want a whole bunch of rookies in a redraft. And Kirby would be my priority. So George Kirby, if I can't have who Frank has, because he's already claimed him, George Kirby does have my eye.
I do have a concern about Kirby that I've brought up before on the podcast.
That is not yours?
I just wonder with Kirby if there's more than one trick in the arsenal. You know what I mean? Because if it's just, Kirby's another popular when everybody's looking at him. Is it just the looks? Because when you dig deeper, I really only see a fastball there. It doesn't have a lot.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a lot of finesse going on that's going to help him. I don't know. I think maybe he might peter out if he doesn't.
Well, I think you're kind of painting it as a pessimistic angle. I don't think there's much bust potential here because it's not your standard command profile where he throws 91. This isn't Kyle Hendricks where things could get really ugly. He throws 95. He's averaging 95 miles per hour with his fastball. He started using the sinker / two seam in the second half of last season, and it didn't help him get whiffs, but it helped him give hitters another look, kept them off balance, created more weak contact, and he was able to throw it for strikes, so it wasn't like he was sacrificing anything there. My issue, the thing that keeps me from loving George Kirby, I don't know where the next step comes from.
Yes,
is the way I would put it. It's got to be one of the slider or curveball. He threw the slider more as the season went on, but he never really got whiffs with it. I mean, he had a 12.5% whiff rate with his slider in the month of September. That was when he used it the most. And that would be a bad whiff rate for a 4-seam fastball or a sinker. 12.5% like that. And it wasn't far off from that for the season as a whole. It was 14%. And the curveball was at 13.7%. So he needs, I think, one of the two breaking balls, or, if the changeup takes a big step forward, which he was at 8% usage last year, He needs one of those pitches, I think, to become like an out pitch.
Yeah.
Or he could just be like Brandon Woodruff has kind of gotten away with not having a great secondary or breaking ball as an out pitch because his fastball is such a high whiff pitch. There's a little bit of that in George Kirby with the four-seam fastball. 26% whiff rate with a four-seam fastball is a pretty good number. But I think he needs to take a step forward with one of those secondaries. And
one thing
I guess the good news is he's got a lot of them.
Yeah, he does. And one of the things was coming off of COVID, he was the first guy I got to see in person back when I got to see players again. And something that really popped for everybody is in that first session, he was hitting 101 on radars.
Mm-hmm.
He was hitting 98, 101. Obviously, he's backed off of that. You can't come back off of that on command. But I would also point out this is a guy that can add more to the fastball when he feels comfortable and when he gets to that point. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you see an increase on the fastball. Also, one of the things that's unique is all of his pitches. This is something I'd love to see him work on. And frankly, I'm going to ask him about if I can catch him in spring training is if you want to just quantify this as 6 pitches, 5 of those pitches all have about a 2,100 RPM on them. They all have about the same type of spin that's working in different things, except the changeup, which he deadens at 1,400. So that's really the big difference. What you'd love to see is a little bit more variety. He's got kind of an EV, he's got like a velocity change across his pitches, but maybe he can add a little bit more spin here or there. You've got a great deadened changeup that hopefully that can become a little bit more. And if there's any velocity change on the fastball in the positive direction, he's got the makings of a guy that could move up into like an Aaron Nola type of range. So I love the command. There's a floor. And I do think this is just a young guy who's still learning the game, but like he is one of the best young guys who has already set a baseline in this game to get a lot better. You hope he just doesn't peter out. And that's
what I was trying to say is I like a guy with some curves. Okay. George Kirby doesn't have them.
That's why Scott likes me so much.
Well, not yet for George Kirby. We'll see if he can add it to his repertoire. I know you brought up the name Aaron Nola Welsh. He feels very Shane Bieber-esque, right? Just really good control. But, you know, the breaking pitches were already there by the time Bieber got to the majors, and they became even better. So hopefully that can happen for George Kirby as well. Welsh, I apologize for stealing the man of your dreams.
This has been our guy all season, though. We've been doing this like since I've been on with you guys. You and I have been going on about this guy.
Yeah, I think he was one of my ADP gifts around Christmas, and nothing has changed. I still really like him. That is Jeffrey Springs. Among starting pitchers with at least 130 innings pitched last season, Springs ranked 15th in K- walk rate, 13th in swinging strike rate, and each of his FIP, xFIP, Sierra, xERA were 3.32 or less. Everything lined up for Jeffrey Springs. The one drawback for him is the innings. He is a converted reliever, now into a starter. He went from 44 2/3 in 2021 to 135 1/3 this past season. He made 24 starts from May 9th on. He only went 6 innings in 7 of those. So, Scott, I know that's something that kind of worries you about pitchers. So maybe you dock him a little bit in a points league because he's not giving you that volume. But when he pitches, I think Springs is going to be really good. Good ratios, over a strikeout per inning. And he is in an organization that, frankly, does really, really good work with their pitchers. So I really like Jeffrey Springs. The ADP is 164.8. Actually, I don't just really like him. I love Jeffrey Springs.
You better love him. That's the whole concept here.
The ADP is 51st starting pitcher off the board. I have him as my 43rd. So I am going to get a lot of him.
Yeah, he's totally fine with where he's going. I mean, I don't really understand the Brady Singer love. He's going after Brady Singer. He's going after Pablo Lopez. He's going after Jordan Montgomery. I'm fine with all that. I see him ahead of is he ahead of Chris Sale?
I don't think so.
No, just behind, I think.
Chris Sale. But Charlie Morton's in that same range too. So,
Scott,
I think it's fine where he's going. I think it's more or less fine.
Do I need to remind you who the pitcher you loved last year was? It was Charlie Morton.
Charlie Morton.
And all he did was break your heart. And you're going back to the well?
He did.
Someone who broke your heart, Scott? How can you do this?
Well, he's not the pitcher I love this year. I think he and Chris Sale are in a similar category. I like Sale more. It's fine. Like Charlie Morton's the backup plan. If somebody else has eyes for Sale and gets to him before me, then I'll go back. I'll go back to Charlie. for old time's sake. But it is going to feel like a bit of a concession after the way last year went, for sure.
Rekindle the old flame that is Charlie Morton. So the pitchers we love: Jeffrey Springs for me, George Kirby for the Welsh, Chris Sale for Scotty, and Edward Cabrera for Chris the Towers. The hitters that we loved: Corey Seager for me, Lars Nootbaar for Welsh, O'Neal Cruz for Chris, and Miguel Vargas for Scotty.
And I liked them all, really.
Yeah, hey, that's a good thing. Agreement is good. That means we've got the right players. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. We're going to wrap there for Scott, Chris, and Chris. I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball Today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.